The iron collar bit into Nara's neck as she stood on the auction block. Her fingers laced so tightly with her younger sister's that both their knuckles had gone pale, despite their green skin. Somewhere in the crowd of jeering humans, a man would decide their fate, and Nara's only prayer was that whoever bought them would at least let them work in the same household, die in the same place, remain together until the end. "Lot 17, the auctioneer bellowed, his voice cutting through the autumn air like a blade. Two orc female sisters. The older one strong, good for heavy labor. The younger's got a gentle hand suitable for kitchen work or tending animals. Sold as a pair or separate, your choice." Nara felt Nessa tremble beside her. Her sister was only 19, barely more than a girl, and the terror in her amber eyes made Nara's heart crack. They had been captured 3 weeks ago when human soldiers raided their clan's hunting grounds, claiming orcs had been stealing livestock. It was a lie, but lies did not matter when you had green skin and tusks and the humans had swords and chains. "I will not let them separate us," Nara whispered in their language, squeezing Nessa's hand. "I swear it on our mother's grave." "Quiet you," a guard snapped, jabbing Nara's ribs with the butt of his spear. The bidding started low. Farmers and merchants called out numbers, but most were only interested in Nara alone. She was tall and broad-shouldered, built for the kind of back-breaking work that killed smaller slaves within years. Nessa was slighter, prettier, and several men eyed her with looks that made Nara's blood boil with protective rage. 200 gold for the big one," someone shouted. 150 for the little pretty. Another voice joined in. Nara's grip on Nessa's hand tightened until it must have hurt, but her sister did not complain. They stood together, trying to be invisible, trying not to draw attention but knowing it was futile. The auctioneer was already discussing splitting them up, noting how much more profit could be made if they went to separate bidders. Then a new voice rang out from the back of the crowd, deep and steady and strangely calm. 500 gold for both of them together. I will not separate them." The crowd went silent. 500 gold was more than twice what the auctioneer had expected to get for the pair combined. Nara's eyes searched frantically through the sea of faces, until she found him a human man in his late 20s, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin, and brown hair that fell just past his collar. He wore simple clothes, a farmer's rough-spun tunic and worn boots, but his shoulders were set with quiet confidence, and his gray eyes were fixed on the auction block with unwavering intensity. 500, the auctioneer repeated, clearly delighted. "Do I hear 550? The crowd muttered, but no one challenged the bid. It was too high, and the man who had spoken it looked like he meant every word. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, bringing his gavel down. "Lot 17 goes to Samuel Pritchard." Guards hauled Nara and Nessa down from the block, their chains rattling. Up close, Samuel Pritchard was even taller than Nara had thought, with calloused hands and a weathered face that spoke of years working outdoors. He paid the auctioneer without haggling, counting out gold coins that must have represented his entire savings, then turned to face the sisters. "My name is Samuel," he said quietly, meeting Nara's eyes without flinching. Most humans would not look an orc in the face. "I have a farm about 5 miles north of here. It is hard work, but I will treat you fairly, and I give you my word that I will never sell either of you, nor separate you. You have my promise on that." Nara studied him, trying to find the deception, the cruelty that surely lurked beneath his calm exterior. But his eyes were steady, and something in his voice made her want to believe him. Beside her, Nessa was shaking so hard she could barely stand. "Why?" Nara asked, the word rough in her throat. "Why buy us both?" Samuel's expression softened slightly. Because I had a sister once. I know what it is to be afraid of losing someone you love. Come on, let us go home." The journey to Samuel's farm took most of the afternoon. He had a wagon hitched to two sturdy horses, and he gestured for the sisters to climb into the back. When the driver of the wagon, an older man named Thomas who worked for Samuel, moved to chain them down, Samuel shook his head. "That will not be necessary," he said firmly. Thomas frowned. "They are orcs, sir. They might run." "Then they run," Samuel replied, "but I do not think they will." He was right. Nara and Nessa sat huddled together in the wagon bed, too exhausted and uncertain to do anything but hold each other as the countryside rolled past. The land was beautiful in a way that made Nara's chest ache. Rolling hills covered in autumn gold and rust, forests thick with oak and pine, fields ready for harvest. It reminded her of home, of the mountains where her clan had lived before the humans came. Samuel's farm was smaller than Nara had expected, just a modest house with a barn, a chicken coop, and fields that stretched toward the tree line. It was well kept, though, with neat fences and a vegetable garden that still bore the last of the season's crops. Samuel helped them down from the wagon and led them inside. The house was simple but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, and two smaller rooms branching off. Samuel gestured to one of the side rooms. "You can sleep here," he said. "There are two beds." "I will bring blankets. Are you hungry?" Nara and Nessa exchanged glances. They had eaten nothing but stale bread and water since their capture. "Yes," Nara admitted. Samuel nodded and moved to the hearth, where he began preparing a meal with the efficiency of someone long accustomed to cooking for himself. He made a simple stew with vegetables and salt pork, thick slices of bread, and mugs of fresh milk. When he set the food before them, Nara stared at it suspiciously. "It is not poisoned," Samuel said dryly, taking a bite of his own portion to prove it. "Eat." They ate. The food was plain but good, and Nara could not remember the last time her stomach had felt full. Across the table, Samuel watched them with an expression that might have been pity or might have been something else entirely. "Tomorrow I will remove your collars," he said when they had finished. "I have tools in the barn. For tonight, rest. You are safe here. Safe." The word felt foreign in Nara's mouth. She did not believe in safety anymore, not for orcs in human lands. But Samuel's eyes held no malice, and when he showed them to their room and left them alone, he did not lock the door. Nessa collapsed onto one of the beds and began to cry, great shuddering sobs that she had been holding back for weeks. Nara held her, stroking her hair and murmuring comfort in their language until exhaustion finally dragged them both into sleep. The next morning, Samuel was true to his word. He brought them to the barn, where he had a variety of tools laid out. The iron collars were secured with locks, but Samuel had a set of picks and a small hammer, and he worked with surprising gentleness to free first Nessa, then Nara. When the collar finally fell away from Nara's throat, she gasped, her hand flying to her neck. The skin was raw and bruised, but the weight was gone. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. Samuel just nodded. "Now let me show you the work. I will not lie to you, it is a lot. I have been running this place alone since my father died 2 years ago, and I am behind on everything. But if we work together, we can manage." He was not exaggerating. The farm was too much for one man, and Samuel had clearly been struggling. Fences needed mending, the roof of the barn had a leak, and the fields were overrun with weeds. But he divided the labor fairly, taking on the heaviest tasks himself, and showing Nara and Nessa how he wanted things done without ever raising his voice or his hand. Nara found herself assigned to the outdoor work, mending fences, chopping wood, helping with the harvest. It was hard labor, but she was built for it, and there was a satisfaction in using her strength for something productive rather than destructive. Samuel worked beside her most days, and she began to notice things about him. The way he spoke gently to the horses, the way he always made sure there was enough food at meals, the way he never stared at her or Nessa the way the men at the auction had. Nessa took over the kitchen and the animals, and Nara watched her sister slowly begin to relax. The terror faded from Nessa's eyes, replaced by something almost like contentment. She sang while she worked, old orc songs that made Nara's throat tight with homesickness. Weeks passed. The first frost came, and Samuel showed them how to prepare the farm for winter. He taught Nara to repair harnesses and sharpen tools. He taught Nessa to preserve vegetables and churn butter. He never called them slaves. He never treated them as property. When Nara asked him why, he just shrugged. "My father taught me that all people deserve dignity," he said simply. "Orc or human, it does not matter, we all bleed the same." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Nara said. "He was." Samuel's expression grew distant. "He died defending this farm from bandits." "My sister, her name was Sarah, she died too. She was only 16. Nara felt something crack open in her chest. "I am sorry. So am I." Samuel met her eyes, and for a moment the grief in them was raw and terrible. "That is why I could not let them separate you and Nessa. I could not stand by and watch someone else lose their sister, not when I could prevent it." After that conversation, something shifted between them. Nara found herself watching Samuel more, noticing the way his hands moved when he worked, the way he smiled at Nessa's terrible jokes, the way he always split the last piece of bread evenly between the three of them. She noticed the scars on his arms, the weariness in his eyes, the way he sometimes stood at the edge of his fields and stared toward the horizon as if looking for something he had lost. Winter came in earnest, and the work shifted indoors. They spent long evenings by the fire, mending clothes and tools, telling stories. Samuel wanted to know about orc culture, about their traditions and beliefs, and he listened with genuine interest as Nara told him about her clan, about the hunts and festivals, about the way orc children learn to track and fight and honor their ancestors. "We are not monsters," she said one night, her voice fierce. "Humans think we are savage, but we have laws and art and love. We care for our families. We mourn our dead. We are not so different from you." "I know," Samuel said quietly. "I have always known that. But there are not many humans who see it." "Then why do you?" He was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. "My father traded with an orc clan when I was young. They were honorable, fair. One of their warriors saved my life when I fell through ice on the river. I was maybe 8 years old. She pulled me out and carried me home, and she never asked for anything in return. I have never forgotten that." Nara felt her heart twist. She wanted to reach out to touch his hand, but she did not know if that would be welcome. Instead, she just nodded. Spring came slowly, the snow melting into mud, the fields preparing to wake. Samuel began planning the planting, discussing crop rotations and soil amendments with Nara as if her opinion mattered. And to her surprise, it did matter to him. He listened when she suggested trying a different layout for the vegetable garden. He nodded thoughtfully when she pointed out that the northern field would benefit from lying fallow for a season. "You have a good mind for this," he said one afternoon as they walked the boundaries of the property. "If you were not," he stopped, frowning. "If I were not what?" Nara asked. "Your slave." "You are not my slave," Samuel said sharply. "You never were." "Then what am I?" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I do not know, my employee, my partner, my friend." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I am not good with words, Nara, but I do not think of you as property. I think of you as someone I am grateful to have in my life." Nara's pulse hammered in her throat. She knew she should not feel this way, should not let her heart race when he stood close or let herself imagine what it would be like to touch him without fear. He was human. She was orc. There were laws against what she was feeling, taboos so old they felt like natural law. But when Samuel looked at her, she felt seen in a way she had never been before. "I am grateful too," she said softly. That night, lying in bed beside her sleeping sister, Nara admitted to herself what she had been denying for months. She was falling in love with Samuel Pritchard. It was foolish and dangerous and impossible, but her heart did not care about any of that. The realization terrified her. Spring turned to summer and the farm flourished under their combined efforts. The fields were lush and green, the garden overflowing, the animals fat and healthy. Samuel hired help for the harvest, local men who eyed Nara and Nessa with suspicion, but said nothing as long as the work got done. The farm was prospering in a way it had not in years, and Samuel's neighbors began to take notice. That was when the trouble started. It began with small things. A fence torn down in the night, tools gone missing. Then one of the neighbors, a man named Garrett who owned the adjoining property, came to the house with a delegation of other farmers. "Pritchard," Garrett said, his voice cold, "we need to talk about your workers." Samuel crossed his arms. "What about them? They are orcs. People are uncomfortable. There have been incidents in the past. There have been no incidents here," Samuel interrupted. "Nara and Nessa work hard and cause no trouble. I will not dismiss them because of prejudice." Garrett's face reddened. "It is not natural, having those creatures living in your house, sharing your table. People are starting to talk. They are saying you have gone soft, that you are forgetting your own kind." "My own kind," Samuel repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "My own kind murdered my father and sister while I was away at market. Human bandits, Garrett. But you did not come here to tell me to get rid of humans, did you?" The delegation left, but the hostility remained. Nara felt it like a weight pressing down on her chest. She knew how this story ended. Humans would not tolerate an orc living freely among them, and eventually, Samuel would be forced to choose between his farm and his principles. She could not let him lose everything for her sake. "We should leave," she told Nessa one evening when Samuel was out checking the livestock. "Before he loses his neighbor's trust, before they drive him out, it is not fair to him." Nessa's eyes filled with tears. "But where would we go? We are free here, Nara. We have a home." "We have nothing," Nara said harshly, though the words tasted like ashes. "We are slaves he was kind enough not to treat as slaves, but we are still orcs in human lands. That will never change." "You love him," Nessa said quietly. Nara froze. "What? You love Samuel? I have seen the way you look at him, the way he looks at you." Nessa reached out and took her hand. "And I think he loves you too. Is that why you want to leave? Because you are afraid?" "I am afraid for him," Nara whispered. "If we stay, he will lose everything." But before she could make plans to go, fate intervened in the worst possible way. It happened on a hot summer night. Nara woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of shouting. She bolted upright, shaking Nessa awake, and they stumbled out of their room to find the house filling with dark smoke. Through the window, she could see flames licking up the side of the barn. "Fire!" Samuel's voice roared from outside. "Get out of the house!" They ran. The night was chaos, flames and smoke, and the terrified screaming of animals trapped in the burning barn. Samuel was already there, throwing open the barn doors, trying to lead the horses out. Nara did not think. She just ran toward the flames. "Nara, no!" Samuel shouted, but she was already inside. The heat was overwhelming, the smoke choking. One of the horses was down, panicking, too frightened to move. Nara grabbed its halter and hauled with all her strength, dragging the animal toward the door. Behind her, she heard the ominous crack of burning timber. Then Samuel was there helping her, and together they got the horse out just as part of the roof collapsed. They fell together in the dirt, coughing and gasping, covered in soot and ash. "You could have died," Samuel said, his voice raw. "So could you," Nara shot back. They stared at each other, and then Samuel laughed, a wild, breathless sound. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met." "You are the most foolish man," Nara retorted, but she was smiling too. Nessa appeared with buckets, and they worked through the night to put out the fire and save what they could. By dawn, the barn was a smoking ruin, but the house still stood, and all the animals had survived. Samuel collapsed on the porch steps, his face gray with exhaustion. Nara sat down beside him, and for a long moment they just breathed. "It was set deliberately," Samuel said finally. "I found traces of oil around the barn's foundation. Someone did this." Rage boiled in Nara's chest. "Garrett. Probably." Samuel's jaw tightened. "But I cannot prove it. And even if I could, the law would not side with me. Not when I am protecting orcs." "Then let us go," Nara said. "Please, Samuel, we will disappear, go back to the wilderness. You can rebuild, find peace with your neighbors." "No." Samuel turned to her, his gray eyes blazing. "I will not let them drive you away. I will not lose you. You will lose everything else. I do not care." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and solid around hers. "Nara, he stopped, struggling for words. "These past months have been the best of my life. You and Nessa, you are my family now, more than that. You are," he took a shaky breath. "I love you. I know I should not. I know it is forbidden and dangerous and probably insane. But I love you, and I will not give you up. Not for my neighbors, not for the law, not for anyone." Nara's world tilted. She stared at him, at this human man who had bought her freedom, who had given her dignity, who had somehow become the center of her entire universe. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have tried not to, but I do." Samuel smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Then he leaned forward and kissed her, gentle and careful, as if she were something precious. Nara kissed him back, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate longing into the touch. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. "What do we do?" Nara asked. "We fight," Samuel said simply. "We rebuild the barn. We plant next season's crops. We live our lives and let them see that love is not bound by the color of our skin or the shape of our teeth. And if they cannot accept that, then we will find somewhere else to build our life together." "Together," Nara repeated, testing the word. It felt like a promise. The next weeks were hard. They rebuilt the barn with the help of Thomas and a few other workers who Samuel trusted. Garrett and his allies made their displeasure known. But they stopped short of open violence, perhaps, because Nara made it clear that any further attacks would not go unanswered. Then, one evening as summer faded into autumn, Samuel called Nara and Nessa to the porch where he had set up a small table with their best dishes. "What is this?" Nara asked, suspicious. "A celebration," Samuel said. He pulled out a sheaf of papers. "I went to town today. I spoke to a magistrate I trust, a man who served with my father. These are manumission papers, official documents declaring that you and Nessa are free citizens, with all the rights and protections that entails." Nessa burst into tears. Nara just stared at the documents, her vision blurring. "You already treated us as free," she said. "But now it is legal," Samuel replied. "Now no one can challenge it. You are free, Nara, truly free." He paused, then pulled out a small box. "And I have one more thing." He opened the box to reveal two simple rings made of silver, beautifully crafted with intricate knotwork. "I know this is not how it is done in your culture," Samuel said, his voice nervous. But in human tradition, when you want to spend your life with someone, you give them a ring and ask them to marry you. So, Nara Willow, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Nessa and any family we might build together? I promise I will never part you from your sister. I swear it on everything I hold sacred. Nara looked at Nessa, who was nodding frantically through her tears. Then she looked back at Samuel, at this impossible, wonderful man who had bought them both and kept his promise. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Samuel's smile could have lit the night sky. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled out another, smaller one. This is for Nessa, as a promise that she will always be part of our family. Nessa took it with shaking hands. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. They married 3 weeks later, in a simple ceremony performed by the same magistrate who had drawn up the Freedom Papers. Garrett and most of the neighbors did not attend, but Thomas was there, and a few others who had come to respect Samuel's integrity. Nessa stood beside Nara as a witness, crying happy tears. When the magistrate pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Nara with such tender joy that she forgot to be afraid of what the future might hold. The winter that followed was hard but happy. They worked together to finish the barn repairs, to stock provisions, to prepare for the cold months. Samuel taught Nara to read by the fire at night, sounding out letters and words until she could puzzle through the farming manuals he kept. Nessa learned to make human pastries and orc flatbread, creating fusion dishes that became family favorites. On the coldest nights, Nara would lie in bed beside Samuel and marvel at how her life had changed. She had been a slave on an auction block, certain she would be separated from her sister, probably worked to death within years. Now she was a free woman, a wife with a home and a future. "What are you thinking?" Samuel asked one night, pulling her closer. "That I am happy," Nara said, and realized it was true. "Terrified still because the world is dangerous and people fear what we have, but happy." "Good," Samuel said, kissing her forehead. "You deserve to be happy. You both do." Spring came again, bringing the promise of new growth. They planted the fields together, Samuel and Nara working side by side while Nessa managed the house and animals. One morning, as they took a break to drink water and catch their breath, Samuel pointed to the horizon. "See that land there? I have been thinking about buying it, expanding the farm. Maybe building a second house so Nessa can have more space when she wants it." "She might not want to live with us forever," Nara said, though the thought made her sad. "One day she might want a life of her own. Then we will help her build it," Samuel said simply. "Whatever she needs, whatever makes her happy, that is what family does. Family." The word settled warm in Nara's chest. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, Nessa came running out to the fields, breathless and excited. "Someone is coming up the road, a whole group of them." Nara and Samuel exchanged worried glances, but when they reached the house, the visitors were not angry neighbors. They were orcs, a small group of travelers by the look of them, led by a familiar face. "Keldon," Nara gasped. Her cousin stood at the head of the group, older and scarred but unmistakably him. "Nara," Keldon embraced her fiercely, then held her at arm's length. "We heard rumors of an orc woman living free on a human farm. We had to see if it was true. We thought you were dead." "We nearly were," Nara said. She introduced Samuel, watching Keldon's expression carefully. To her relief, her cousin looked more curious than hostile. "You married a human," Keldon said slowly. "I married a good man," Nara corrected. "He freed us, gave us a home. I love him." Keldon studied Samuel for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Any man who can earn my cousin's love is worth knowing, and we could use more humans like you in the world." They hosted the orc travelers for 3 days, sharing food and stories. It was strange, having two parts of her world come together, but it felt right. Samuel listened to orc tales of the mountains and the clans, asked questions with genuine respect, and offered help if any of them ever needed a safe place to stay when they left. Keldon pulled Nara aside. "You have built something special here. Do not let anyone destroy it." "I will not," Nara promised. As the years passed, the farm continued to grow. Samuel's predictions about buying more land came true, and they expanded their holdings carefully, always working together to make decisions. Nessa eventually married one of Keldon's traveling companions, a young orc warrior named Throck who visited the farm regularly and eventually decided to stay. They built a house on the northern edge of the property, close enough to visit easily but far enough for privacy. Some of the neighbors never accepted the unusual household, but others slowly came around, especially when they saw how prosperous and well-run the farm was. Samuel gained a reputation as a fair trader and an honest man, and gradually his defense of orc rights became less scandalous and more simply. Samuel. 5 years after that first auction, Nara stood in the doorway of their home, watching Samuel play with their daughter, a beautiful child with green-tinged skin, small tusks, and her father's gray eyes. The little girl shrieked with laughter as Samuel chased her around the yard, both of them covered in dirt from the garden. Nessa emerged from her own house down the path, her own belly round with her first child. "They are going to be exhausted by dinner," she said, shaking her head fondly. "Let them play," Nara said. "There is time." And there was. Time for laughter and work, for love and family, for building a life that defied every expectation and prejudice. On the auction block all those years ago, Nara had clutched her sister's hand and prayed only that they would not be parted. Samuel had bought them both and promised exactly that, no parting. He had kept that promise and given them so much more. As the sun set over the fields, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Samuel caught Nara's eye and smiled. She smiled back, her heart full of the kind of joy she had once thought impossible. They were free. They were together. They were home, and that, Nara thought, was everything.